the question might arise, I'm an LLC and I want to reorganize into a corporation. What is involved in that? In general, this should be a relatively straightforward exercise. So the reorganization can take multiple forms. It can either be a conversion from an LLC to a corporation, or it can be a merger with a newly formed corporation that you create in Delaware or some other state, or in other cases, there are some alternative structures. So there are some considerations that you need to keep in mind. Number one, you're going to have to obtain the consent of some level of the LLC members and maybe the board, if you have a board, to allow for the reorganization or the merger into the new corporation. Number two, you're going to have to make sure that you try to do this in a tax-free manner. And each case is pretty specific on that, but you'll have to look at things like, do you have convertible notes outstanding? Do you have other types of debt outstanding? What are the equity incentives that you've given to people to make sure that when you effect one of these conversions or mergers, you do so that everything is in a tax-free manner. Number three, you'll have to make state filings. So any of these kinds of mergers or reorganizations require that you make filings in both the state where you're currently incorporated or organized, and then the new state, if the new state is involved, where you want to be organized or reorganized. And especially now when things are a little bit slower because of COVID and everything else, some of those filings take time to get done. So a lot of these things are delayed, so there is a time element. So how long does it typically take to do an LLC to corporate reorg? Generally speaking, this should be able to be done within a relatively short period of time. So the process generally involves, number one, meeting with an attorney to figure out what is currently in place and what kind of approvals are necessary to effect the reorganization. Step two will be drafting the particular conversion agreement or agreement of plan and merger so that you can effect a tax-free reorganization. The third step is going to be making sure that all the different filings are being prepared for the various states. Number four is ensuring that both the new corporation and the old corporation have dotted the I's and crossed the T's in terms of any new agreements that need to be entered into, or any other transfers of agreements and IP and things like that that need to be effected as a result of the reorganization. So this process can take anywhere from 24 to 48 hours to do all of the documentation for this. If it's relatively straightforward, it can take a week or two. It just depends on the particulars of the situation. But in general, this is something that isn't usually that difficult to effect as long as the company is providing us with all the information that we need to figure this out. And then the one thing that can take a long time in this environment, but doesn't have to necessarily take a long time, is getting the filings approved in the state or states in question that are involved with the reorganization. And that's something that's just beyond everyone's control. You're at the mercy of the state, the secretaries of state, or the other corporate divisions of the Secretary of State to get those things filed. But in general, this should not be a long and drawn out process. And the goal is to do it as quickly and efficiently as possible to set the company up for a financing transaction, which is usually what prompts this sort of reorganization.